Sociolinguistics. We all know that language encompasses all sphere of human activity, right? So, in this subject, we study society and language, right? How they are interacting with each other. So, the way that people talk depends on where they come from and where they belong in their society. So, by knowing the way people talk, there is an old saying that speak may I know thee, right? So, when we talk, other people know where we come from, which chunk of the society we belong to. It also depends on the details of the particular speech situation. I mean, there are so many situations, formal situation, informal situation, and there can be a lot more other things too. So, with the difference of this, the change in this formality of the situation, the speech a person is making also changes. So, all these aspects are studied in sociolinguistics. So, we can define sociolinguistic as the study of variation in speech that depends on such matters is the domain of sociolinguistics. So, where people come from and where they belong to, and the formality, all these matters are discussed under the domain of sociolinguistics. So, variation in the form of language, especially as the result of social categories that we are in different situation, we belong to different social classes, we use language in different situations, academic situation, formal situation, informal situation, right? Then where there are languages used by different ethnic groups. So all these things are discussed in this subject, which is sociolinguistics. So there are certain social variables that affect our speech, right? The same speech, the same language being used by different people or belonging to different groups of society have differences in their speech. So there are certain variables which affect the speech of people. For example, ethnicity. People belong to different linguistic groups. So as a result of their belonging to different linguistic groups affects their speech. Then religion. It's also one of the main component of the culture. So it also affects our speech. Status, the social status of a person matters a lot in his speech. Then gender. Men used their speech different from women, right? So level of education. We all know that people who are educated use speech differently than people who are not educated or not well educated. Then age is also the speech of the young people, the speech of the middle-aged people, and the speech of the old-age people is different from each other, right? And there are so many other aspects. Yeah, we can find that the people, especially the young people, have differences in their speech on the basis of their gender differences. So there are so many social variables which affects our speech. So how adherence to these rules is used to categorize individuals in social and socio-economic classes. So on the basis of these social variables, we group people into different groups on the basis of these social variables. So sociolinguistics overlap considerably with pragmatics. In pragmatics, we use how language is used, so it overlaps with pragmatics. Sociolinguistic overlap with pragmatics. So it is historically closely related to linguistic anthropology, and the distinction between the two fields has been questioned. So it is very close to anthropology, which study how people use speech in different periods of the history. So sometime we have to make a question: Are they the same discipline, or they are different discipline? It differs from sociology of language, which basically focuses on the effects of language on the society, not society on the language, rather language on the society. So sociolinguistic is basically different from sociology, which is a different field, although it also studies language. As the usage of a language varies from place to place, language usage also varies among social classes, and it is these sociolinguistics studies. So on the basis of difference on the different in speech in different groups in a society, as we have just discussed in under social variables, so there are sociolects. That means that certain groups use speech in different way from others, so we call them sociolects, right? So in sociolinguistics, sociolects are studied. People are normally aware of the social factors that make them choose the suitable language. You may imagine that a person who may be very educated uses speech when he is in an educated circle in a certain way, but when he is interacting with a person who is not educated, it is likely that he will change the way he speaks generally. So people generally change when they speak to different groups of people, or different speech communities. Sociolinguistics sociolinguists study the social context and its influence on language. So what is the context of the society in which people are interacting, and its influence on language? How people belonging to different social groups affect language. For example, a person from an elite class uses language differently. A person from an educated background uses language differently. So sociolinguist studies these factors.